What's up, Cerebral NFL fans? Happy Tuesday, December 28th, 2021 morning to everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in for their daily cerebral brain food. What's up, guys? We're going to talk about the Eagles today. And before we jump into the weeds here, we got to start off with some news and notes about what's going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I hate to report this, but there is a spike in that reserve cough cough list. I'm not saying the name because I don't want the YouTube algorithm overseers to come after me. But I think we're up to 7 players now, guys. As I understand the list on Tuesday morning, Derek Barnett, Sean Bradley, Andre Chachere, LaRaven Clark, Andre Dillard, Tehran Jackson, and Ryan Kerrigan are all on that list. Not the greatest of news for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the two biggest names being added to that list of recent were Derek Barnett and Tarron Jackson, which clearly puts us in a little bit of a pickle when it comes to the defensive line rotation, clearly. Now, what I will say is this. Tarron Jackson, I really like what this young man has done, 6th-round pick. I think he's come in. I think he's been excellent for the Philadelphia Eagles. But, at least we're losing more of a contributor type guy, even though he's been playing really well. And it's a guy that I would like to have seen continue to play well for the Philadelphia Eagles. But he's a guy that only has like 219 snaps on the year. His pressure rate percentage was only like a 2.7%. So he's a young developing guy. I mean, I think we can get through this. 5 hurries on the year, 1 sack. Derek Barnett is definitely one of the guys who's played a lot of snaps for the Philadelphia Eagles. As a matter of fact, from my count, his 676 total snaps are the second highest snap rate among all the Philadelphia Eagles on this football team in terms of the defensive linemen, I should say. 676 snaps on the season. His pressure rate percentage was 4.6. That's outside the top 100 guys. So we can make the argument of what are we exactly losing. 18 hurries on the year, 2 sacks. We're going to be tested in terms of the depth, guys. I mean, the good news is Javon Hargrave, who's clearly been our best pass rush defensive lineman, he's still active as of today. Knock on wood, a lot of time left to go. No doubt about it. Javon Hargrave on the season, 675 snaps, 1 short of what we have for Derek Barnett, guys. A 7.9% pressure rate percentage. So that 7.9 is 28th overall in the league. He has 37 hurries on the season, which ranks him 14th in the league. And he's got 8 sacks, which is also a top 50 ranking in terms of interior and also edge rushers. So he's obviously Javon Hargrave's had an excellent season. We're still okay as far as I can tell, guys. Fletcher Cox, 696, leads all Eagles players in terms of snap counts. 696 on the season has a 5 PRP, pressure rate percentage. That's also outside. It's just outside the top 100 guys. I mean, it's not a great rate for Fletch. This is clearly a down season for Fletch. 28 hurries on the season, which I think is a better indication that the Eagles are pretty good at knocking guys off their spot. Our PRP is low because we're not converting it into sacks. And then 3 sacks on the season. Past that, ladies and gents, I think the next snap leader for the Philadelphia Eagles, believe it or not, would be Josh Sweat. 6.5. He's played 614 snaps on the year, 6.5 PRP rate, 28 hurries, 7 sacks. So still having Sweat, Hargrave, and Fletch available, we're okay. I think we're going to be fine, right? Milton Williams, who's probably our main backup in terms of the snap count, you could argue is clearly the main backup. 395 snaps on the season, a 4.2 PRP rate, 10 hurries, 2 sacks. And then the guys that kind of falling behind that is Hassan Ridgeway, 328 snaps on the season, a 3.8 PRP, 7 hurries, 2 sacks. So as we look at this list, this COVID list that's kind of coming out here, and I just said the word. I think the one takeaway I take from this is that we're kind of hoping we can get Ryan Kerrigan back. You get Ryan Kerrigan back, you could survive the depth issues here, right? I mean, we'll be perfectly fine here. I would take a wild guess that if Ryan Kerrigan does not return, and we're facing this Washington football team on Sunday, and we have these guys out because of being ill, my wild guess here is that you would probably see some kind of a combination of Milton Williams maybe bouncing out to the 5 technique or potentially moving a Jannard Avery into that role, since Jannard Avery has played as a pass rusher in his career. So you got that element of things there. So that's what I would look to. Some other things I think that you'll see is you'll get Cameron Malveaux. I don't know how you say his name, guys, but Malveaux kind of got that that New Orleans like French kind of thing going on, that Creole thing in his name here. He's only played 34 snaps on the season, but he's played recently. So I would take a wild guess he would be elevated from the practice squad up to the active roster. Probably see a guy like Jannard Avery kind of get moved in a little bit into the defensive end rotation, be used as maybe more of a joker. Then you probably see Milton Williams bounce outside a little bit more. And that's assuming we have the absence of Ryan Kerrigan still. So Ryan Kerrigan was put on he was put on the list last week, so there's probably a really strong possibility he's back this Sunday. But so far, that's what we got, guys, is that we still have Javon Hargrave, we still have Fletcher Cox, we still have Josh Sweat, we still have Milton Williams, Hassan Ridgeway. We may get Ryan Kerrigan back. If we don't, then I would probably take a wild guess that, Cameron Malview would probably get some snaps at defensive end to kind of fill in some of that role, because Tehran Jackson and Derek Barnett would be out more than likely unless they can clear the protocol. And then I would say that outside of that, you'd probably see a guy like Jannard Avery bounce and play down on the defensive line. And then if you get a little light at defensive tackle, which I think we'd be fine with a 3-man rotation at defensive tackle, but if necessary, if things became necessary, Marlon Tuipulotu would probably be the other guy that you'd see some snaps. Marlon Tuipulotu is a draft pick. He was a guy that was supposedly, he's supposed to be a 3rd-round pick. Hasn't quite lived up that potential. I'm guilty of buying into it too, guys. I really loved Marlon Tuipulotu's film. This is why I never trust the Pac. Never trust the Pac-12 because of this. Every time I see a defensive lineman or offensive lineman I like a lot, they tend to never really develop the way I think they're going to develop based upon their film, because the trenches aren't really what makes the Pac-12 stand out. And that's kind of the defensive end rotation right now. Other guys on the practice squad, Matt Leo's on that international tag designation. I highly doubt they would elevate him, because I think he would lose that status the minute they do that. So probably not going to do that. Then you have Marvin Wilson, interior defensive lineman. You have Raekwon Williams, interior defensive lineman. I doubt those guys would be elevated. Like I said, my money, I would bank on Cameron Malview to be the person who gets elevated from the practice squad to the active roster, in my opinion, guys. The other person that I kind of left out of our discussion this morning so far, guys, is Patrick Johnson, which Patrick Johnson could easily be kind of elevated to that role. He could play some outside edge rusher, or he could also, if you're going to have to use Jannard Avery down on the defensive line more, you could probably then take Patrick Johnson and utilize Patrick Johnson a little bit more in maybe that Sam linebacker role, get him kind of going. So just some news and notes to kind of start today's podcast. There's definitely some things going on here with the illness list. I'm just going to call it the illness list. Derek Barnett was elevated to it. Tehran Jackson is elevated to that now. A little bit of depth issues here. Hopefully it doesn't keep going any further than this. But nonetheless, you deal with the hand you're dealt with sometimes, right, guys? We're just going to play along. And let's hope that our defensive line doesn't kind of give us some of the same problems of not completing pressure, because I don't think our problem is gaining pressure. I think if you look at the hurries, we got guys that are ranking in terms of Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, and, Fletcher Cox. All 3 of those guys are top 50 in terms of pressures. Hurries, I should say, in terms of hurries. But basically mean they can knock a guy off his spot, but they're not completing it necessarily and turning it into sacks all the time, which has been the larger issue, with our football team in terms of the pass rush.